So you have to remember, when I work in newsrooms, it's a fact that every anti-Harry and Meghan story comes from Kensington Palace.
But I was doing a piece for one of the nationals, writing a piece, and I was told, because I'm quite critical of the monarchy in many ways, I was told I could say what I want about Harry and Meghan, but I had to lay off William and Kate. That was the instruction from the editor. So I think there was an element of truth in what he says.
Much of the negativity towards the couple is coming from within the royal family. The royal family and staff of the royal family are the ones that are very often leaking these stories to the press.
I mean, they can deny it all they like till they're blue in the face, but there's been an awful lot of leaking, particularly from Kensington Palace, about how things were developing. And
have you heard from anyone in the palace thanking you for the, serious defense of them?
I've had some messages communicated to.
Hello everyone, and welcome back. It's Mike here, and I'm glad you could join me for another deep dive into the world of the royals. Today, we're going to talk about something that many of you have asked about. It is a topic that sits at the very heart of the royal drama we have watched unfold over the last few years. We are going to explore where so many of the negative stories about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle actually came from. It might surprise you to learn that many royal commentators and news reports suggest the source was not just random gossip, but something much closer to home for the couple. Kensington Palace itself. It's a complicated and fascinating story, so let's get into it. The idea that a royal household would leak stories about its own members might sound strange, but it is a recurring theme in the British press. For years we have seen countless articles appear that paint Harry and Meghan in a negative light. These stories often quote unnamed palace sources or royal insiders. These anonymous sources are said to have close knowledge of what happens behind the closed doors of the palace. Royal experts who spend their careers analysing the monarchy have pointed out this pattern time and time again. They suggest that these leaks are not accidental, but are part of a deliberate strategy to shape how the public sees certain members of the family. It is a shadowy world of whispers and briefings. Think about the sheer volume of stories that came out, especially after Harry and Meghan got married. There were tales of arguments, difficult behaviour and breaks in royal protocol. For example, stories about Meghan being demanding with staff, or articles that highlighted a growing rift between the two brothers William and Harry. The Mirror has often reported on how these narratives can be traced back to briefings from within the royal households. What makes this so compelling is the consistency of the message. It wasn't just one or two bad stories. It was a steady stream of negativity that seemed designed to create a very specific and often unflattering picture of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. This constant flow of information had a powerful effect on public opinion. When you read the same kind of story in multiple newspapers, it starts to feel like the truth. The British public, who are generally very fond of the royal family, began to believe these narratives. They trusted the newspapers and the insiders they quoted. This is how a public image is built, or in this case, carefully dismantled. The stories created a division, pitting members of the public against Harry and Meghan. This was not just media gossip. It was a powerful force that began to shape the couple's reality within the institution they were born and married into, making their position increasingly difficult. So how does this actually work? How does a story travel from a private conversation inside a palace to the front page of a national newspaper? It often starts with a carefully managed leak or a briefing. A palace aide might have an off-the-record chat with a trusted journalist. They might share a piece of information, a specific detail about an argument, or a comment that was made in private. The journalist then writes the story, citing a vague palace source to protect the identity of the person who gave them the information. This system creates a deniable link between the palace and the story, even though the information originated from within its walls. This is a classic tactic used in politics and public relations all over the world. Let's look at a more concrete example. Remember all the stories about the tension between the Fab Four, William, Kate, Harry and Meghan? Recently, on 6 June 2025, the Mirror revisited a moment from a few years ago. It was a seemingly small thing, a two-word joke made by Prince William that, in hindsight, was identified as an early public sign of the cracks appearing between the couples. This incident was framed as a key moment that foreshadowed the huge rift that would follow. By bringing up old events and giving them new meaning, the media, allegedly guided by palace sources, can build a consistent narrative over time, making the eventual split seem inevitable and placing the blame where they want it to land. The relationship between the royal households and the British press is a very old and complex one. They need each other. The royals need the media to communicate with the public and maintain their profile, while the media needs the royals for stories that sell newspapers. This creates a strange kind of partnership. The palaces can reward friendly journalists with exclusive access and information, while they can punish unfriendly ones by cutting them off. This system encourages journalists to report stories in a way that keeps their palace sources happy. It is a game of give and take, and unfortunately for Harry and Meghan, they often seem to be on the losing side of it. This is why it is so important to think critically about where these stories come from. When you see a headline that says "Royal Insider Claims," it is worth asking who that insider might be and what their motivation could be. Are they trying to tell the public the truth, or are they trying to push a particular agenda? Are they protecting one member of the family by damaging the reputation of another? These are the questions we must ask. The stories are often more complicated than they first appear, and understanding the machinery behind them is key to understanding the full picture of what happened to Harry and Meghan during their time as working royals. The royal family, and specifically Kensington Palace, are masters of managing the public narrative. This is not just about leaking negative stories, it is also about controlling the timing of news releases to distract from other, less favourable events. This is a tactic known as media manipulation, and it is used very effectively. A perfect example of this happened just recently. On their 7th wedding anniversary in May 2025, Harry and Meghan were reportedly snubbed by William and Kate. This could have become a big negative story about the ongoing family feud. But what did we see from Kensington Palace that day? Something completely different. Instead of addressing the anniversary snub, Kensington Palace released a statement and a lovely video all about World Bee Day. The video featured the Princess of Wales, Kate, looking radiant and engaged in a positive environmental activity. As reported by Geo.tv, this was widely seen by royal watchers as a brilliant strategic move. It immediately shifted the media's focus away from the family drama and onto a positive, feel-good story. The headlines changed from being about a family rift to being about Kate's work with bees. It's a clever way to bury bad news and ensure that the narrative remains favourable to the senior members of the family who are still in the UK. This control of the narrative also extends to how different members of the family are portrayed over time. While Meghan often faced criticism, Kate is consistently presented in a positive light. Even when there is potential for controversy, the stories are often spun to her advantage. For instance, recent reports have suggested that Kate has been acting as a peacemaker, secretly urging William to reconcile with his brother. This paints her as a caring mediator, which contrasts sharply with the public narrative of a deep and unfixable rift. It helps to maintain her image as a respected and graceful future queen, above the fray of the family arguments that are so often attributed to others. This careful image management creates a clear hierarchy in the public's mind. There are the good royals and, by implication, the difficult ones. Hello! Magazine recently drew a beautiful symbolic contrast between Meghan's wild childhood garden and the formal, perfectly maintained gardens of royal homes like Kensington Palace. This was used as a metaphor for her journey away from the rigid and curated life of the monarchy. The palace's ability to control which stories are told and how they are told was a huge factor in the Sussexes' experience. It created an environment where they felt they could not get a fair hearing from the public or the press. Ultimately, this relentless and coordinated negative press campaign was a major reason why Harry and Meghan decided to step back from their roles as senior working royals. Imagine living in a world where you feel that your own family's office is actively working against you, briefing the press with stories that damage your reputation. Prince Harry has spoken about this himself, describing the pain and frustration of seeing these stories appear and feeling powerless to stop them. He felt he had to choose between protecting his own family's mental health and remaining within an institution that he believed was not protecting them. It was an impossible choice. The decision to leave was not made overnight. It was the result of years of feeling unsupported and targeted. The constant scrutiny, comparison and criticism took a heavy toll. Every action, from how Meghan cradled her baby bump to the type of flowers she chose for her wedding, was dissected and often criticised. When they felt that the source of many of these damaging stories was the very institution they were supposed to be a part of, it became unsustainable. They wanted a life where they could control their own narrative and speak in their own voices without having their words twisted or their actions misinterpreted by anonymous palace sources. Their departure sent shockwaves through the monarchy and the world. But when you look at the pattern of media coverage, it becomes easier to understand. They were not just running away from bad headlines, they were trying to escape a system that they felt was toxic and damaging. They wanted to forge their own path, away from the games of palace intrigue and media manipulation. By moving to America, they were able to take back some control, launching their own projects and communicating directly with the public through platforms like their Archewell Foundation, telling their own story in their own way. So, when we look back at the drama of the royal rift, it is crucial to remember the power of the unseen players. The whispers from palace corridors, the strategic leaks to friendly journalists, and the carefully timed distractions all played a part. The story of Harry and Meghan is not just a family drama. It is also a powerful example of how public image is managed and how the media can be used to shape a narrative. It is a reminder that behind every royal headline, there is often a much deeper and more complicated story waiting to be told. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.